Okay.
Welcome in to Free Skates Friday of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, presented by Davidson's Beer, Wine, and Spirits. I'm your host, Rudo, joined by AJ as always, and our special guest, beat writer for the Winnipeg Jets, I believe at The Athletic, Murat Ates. I probably butchered your name, even though I've been trying all week to get it correct. Hopefully I got close, but thank you for joining us, and how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. It was a great shot. It's Murat Ates.
Murat.
The fact that you got the last name right in of itself is an impressive feat, so thank you for it.
Half right isn't bad for me. We'll take it. We'll take it where I can get it. Let's just jump right in. First of all, obviously the Jets just missed out on the round robin games. They were coming for Dallas at the end of the season. Do you feel a little bit gypped?
In terms of Winnipeg sort of missing the cutoff or what have you, I don't know what to say about that. I think that they finished in an area where they deserve to, because their 5-on-5 metrics weren't really very good. They spent a ton of time in their own zone this year, and everybody knows they have a ton of offensive talent. And Scheifele, Laine, Connor, Wheeler, Nick Ehlers is one of the league's most underrated players. And nobody talks about him. He's scored at a 30-goal pace a couple of times already. So in terms of how disappointing they were offensively, not to really generate, I mean, we talked just before we went on about the defense being an issue. Connor Hellebuyck had a ton of work to do. It all averages out that, I think that they were a bubble team, and they're fine to be in the mix, in the play-in mix.
And now they're headed to a literal bubble.
Yeah.
Right on, yeah.
So you kind of beat me to the punch here. This is a question we ask all of our guests, and you said Nikolai Ehlers is one of the most underrated players in the league. You can take him as your underrated, but we want an overrated player from the Jets as well.
Wow, that's a tough one to roll with, because I think league-wide, I don't know that the world knows how good Kyle Connor is as an offensive talent. There is nobody from the top of the circles in on the Winnipeg Jets who I would rather have the puck. If you're looking to finish off a play, his brain moves so quickly, his hands move so quickly. He has he has an incredible offensive skill set. But at the same time, within Winnipeg circles, I think that he's surpassed Scheifele and Laine among reputation in terms of offensive powerhouses. He's not a particularly strong defensive player. There are some things about his game that, like, he gets maximum power play time, even strength time, all kinds of minutes. I think that he's begun to be overrated by a local crowd who are suddenly putting them above Patrick Laine as a goal scorer and above Mark Scheifele as a playmaker. I don't think he's there yet. He's just a gifted offensive threat from the hash marks.
All right, I like the answer.
I'm curious about, just, this is because he's been one of my favorite prospects from afar for a while, but what has happened with Rossovic there that just has not quite translated or worked?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's a question of opportunity. He gets buried. I mean, I talk about Nick Ehlers as a guy buried on the second line that nobody really recognizes how good he is in terms of how he can drive play and generate offense. Jack Rossovic has played largely fourth line minutes for most of his career. This season, he got more opportunity than that, and he actually played with Blake Wheeler and Nick Ehlers on the Jets' second line. With Brian Little hurt, Blake Wheeler became a second line center. He had Ehlers and Rossovic on either side. That was a high-skill, high-octane line, and Rossovic's best opportunity of his career, to be sure. But you look at most of the rest of it, and fourth line isn't an exaggeration in terms of his minutes and opportunity. Winnipeg's often been so deep. Whether Brian Little was healthy, Rossovic wasn't quite ready to usurp him from the second line center role. When Kevin Hayes was traded for Paul Stastny, that bumps Rossovic down even more. So he hasn't necessarily had that. Now, is he going to be able to take it when he gets it? That's going to be the question. I think he's going to have to do a little bit of adaptation, because he came up through the U.S. program, scoring a ton of points. He played with Austin Matthews and Matthew Tkachuk, I believe, on the same line with the U.S. NDTV program. He sees himself as a scorer. He still has all of those hands. But at the NHL level right now, where he's lined up for in the playoffs, he's going to be playing with Andrew Kopp and Adam Lowry on Winnipeg's third line in a checking capacity. He's going to need to be a two-way winger before he gets that opportunity to play center or to be in a more prime offensive place. And I don't think, even if he's best suited as, a high-end winger on a top line down the road, I don't think he's going to get that chance until he proves that he can knock it out of the park at the lower levels that he's getting so far.
It's kind of a strange place for a young player to be in, because Colorado finds themselves in a similar spot with a guy like Tyson Jost, where the skill level you think would dictate a top six role, but they're just too deep, they're too talented, so he has to adapt on the fly. It's kind of a tough ask to ask a guy to be a different guy than he always has been in order to prove that he deserves a chance to be who he's always been. Like it's you. Hey, we need you to change in order to prove that you deserve a bigger role to do the things you've always done well. It's one of those weird things in the NHL where we see it a lot with young players who don't just smash the door down and immediately get that top six opportunity because the team is good or they have a slow start to their career or whatever the reason may be. And then, we saw a guy like Sam Bennett in Calgary. It was a great example of this too, where it just never really happened. And then that guy had to figure it out. And he's turned himself into a quality bottom six guy now, but not everybody can adapt to that. So it's one of those interesting things about some of the deeper teams at forward where you see these situations crop up with some of these guys.
And I think a lot of the metrics support, aging curves support promoting these guys younger in their careers than maybe once upon a time we were all raised on believing, a peak came between, 28 and 32 once upon a time. Then it was high 20s. And now there are folks who believe that it's in low mid 20s in terms of a player's peak. And so you might miss like getting the maximum out of these guys if you do sort of stepwise them up in that way. With Rossovic, he has the ability, though, to be a two-way impact player. When he plays wing, he sees the ice very well. It's a simple up and down his lane game, and he tracks back. He has the hustle. He has the commitment to track back and make a stick check on somebody. And then I think so far when we've seen him at center or in a premier position, the game's moving a little bit too quick for him yet. And he's a little bit also in picture on some of his defensive assignments as a center. So I'm trying to balance the idea that, hey, a lot of these guys probably should be promoted before they are with, my eyes don't tell me that he's ready to say become Winnipeg's second line center at somebody else's expense at this stage.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Brian Little not going to be a part of this for the Jets, correct?
That's right. Absolutely. Cody Eakin's got that spot right now.
So how's that going to go?
I see that smile.
Cody Eakin, not that long ago, Cody Eakin was, you could make an argument about that caliber of a player. But it's been a couple of injuries ago now. And can Cody Eakin get back to that level?
Well, I don't think he's the same offensive player that had a career year with Vegas a couple years back. I think that a lot of the things that went into that were percentage driven. I mean, when a guy more or less doubles his shooting percentage in 1 year, doesn't raise the shot volume, he's not dominating the flow of play, and all of a sudden his point totals go up, well, something else is going on there. And if you can't repeat that for a couple of seasons, maybe you shouldn't bank on it. The interesting thing that happened when he arrived in Winnipeg, he played 8 games, he scored 5 points, and so now the city of Winnipeg is looking to him to be, an impact offensive player like, Brian Little would have been at his peak or other players have been in that role. But if you go through the video and you go point by point, play by play, there's an assist he gets on a Nick Ehlers goal where the goaltender Braden Holtby thought he had the puck covered. He lifted his glove and there's just a gimme sitting there. There's a brilliant kick play from Ehlers. There's a lucky bounce. There's if you go video by video of these points, again, I think we're being misled into thinking that he can be a top offensive player and an impact one in the playoffs. At the same time, I don't want to take away from this idea that, he can be the speedy hustle guy on that line. And Nick Ehlers and Patrick Laine, I actually would say, are so far ahead of who they were 2 years ago when they were on either side of Brian Little or then Paul Stastny when he arrived in time for the playoffs. They're so much further ahead in terms of their ability to impact where the game gets played as well as their offensive skills that no, Cody Eakin isn't a plus at 2 center compared to other, Western Conference or Eastern Conference playoff teams. you might get mileage out of that line, especially if you can shelter them and use the Lowry line as a tough minutes along with Scheifele's. You might be able to get mileage out of them just based on who those young wingers have become.
All right. We have a question from the DNVR Lounge here for you. Our local Winnipegger, Luke from Winnipeg, wants to know a little bit more about Christian Vesalainen and the expectations for him in Winnipeg after it was a 30-point AHL season this year, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to see a guy who came that highly touted, was a first-round pick, managed to score at an impressive level in Liga. He's had impressive offensive performances at multiple leagues before this season, and then all of a sudden it looks like he's flatlining at half a point per game, and okay, what's going on there? I think the thing to remember is that while acknowledging, no, he's not knocking on the door of an NHL job right now, and no, I don't see the benefit to him being part of the play-in mix right now. He's not going to step into the playoff lineup or anything to that effect. At the same time, he is a relatively young player. He's still an exceptionally young player for his draft class and for prospect status as well. This was his first full season in North America. He definitely had issues adjusting to the lanes that he took and the size of the ice after kind of a convoluted travel-filled year last year. So what I would look for from Christian Vesalainen is something approaching a point per game in a premier offensive AHL role in his next season. If he can get back into that range, you might project him again to have a top 6 NHL future. If he's sort of middling or plugging in and along something closer to what he did this year and he keeps that up for too many years, then you start to wonder how he's going to fit and whether he's actually going to be able to turn his speed, shot, and size into an NHL job. To wrap that up, I'm still optimistic. I think give him at least one full year in North America. At his age, he'll figure out a way to score and put pucks in the net.
With a guy like Vesalainen, does that give them, and a guy like, I guess to a lesser extent, Rossovic, where maybe two young guys that could take bigger jobs in the future, is that how they want to try and fix the defense in the offseason? Is that they've got plenty of high-end forwards that they could pick from. You try and maybe move one of those guys out, and then you move, you can not necessarily replace them at the same level, certainly right away, but you hope that Vesalainen could replace a guy like Nick Ehlers in 2 or 3 years. And then, you use Ehlers or somebody else. I mean, it doesn't have to be Ehlers, but one of these other forwards that they have as a trade piece to try and balance the roster a little bit, because right now it's pretty imbalanced, the top heavy at the forward position.
Well, I 100% agree with the concept that the Winnipeg Jets are imbalanced, not only in the fact that they're top heavy in terms of forwards, but even the skill set among their forwards. You might like a two-way capable version of, Kyle Connor is an offense first player, Patrick Laine is an offense first player, Nick Ehlers is a effective play driver, but that's because he skates so well and he generates offensive zone time through his wheels. He's not a dominant player in terms of back-checking in his own zone. Mark Scheifele is one of the world's best offensive players. He's not Sean Couturier in his defensive end. There are a lot of offense-first forwards, even amongst the Winnipeg Jets forward group, which is top-heavy, and there aren't a lot of defensemen in Winnipeg right now. I don't think that Vesalainen's ceiling is Ehlers high. So if that's the contingency plan, I don't think Winnipeg has quite the backfill of somebody at Ehlers, Connor, or Laine's ilk. Does that mean, though, like they're still top heavy? Does that still mean that they might not shop an Ehlers or to a lesser degree a Rossovic to sort of go look for that patchwork? I think that is an angle that they've approached in the past. There's a lot of smoke around some Ehlers rumors for a defenseman last summer, which I think Winnipeg will be pleased with themselves that they kept him for what turned out to be a breakout season this year. Now I begin to wonder if Jack Rossovic will end up being an odd man out at some point that becomes a part of a package for somebody to round out the top 4, where you have Josh Morrissey, Dylan DeMello. Dylan DeMello's a UFA this summer or this fall, whenever these things happen these days, and Neil Pionk. 3 men you can count on. Winnipeg needs a 4th to be sure, and how they get there, that's going to be a mystery, I think, to me. And maybe the idea of a forward for a D is the answer.
All right. Last question of the first period here. Who is the Jets' game changer for these playoffs, and why is it Connor Hellebuck?
Well, he had the best season in the NHL this year. I don't think there's any doubt in the world that he's going to be the Vezina Trophy winner when those get announced. No one stopped more shots. Nobody stopped more shot quality. Nobody had better goals saved above expectation numbers. And you just watch the Winnipeg Jets with your eyes this year. They spent so much time in their own zone, so much time. And it wasn't all controlled, composed time in their own zone either. There were giveaways. There were breakdowns. I think it's 7 of 10 regularly used defensemen made $1 million or less. There were waiver wire pickups. This team was stitched together. Bufflin's absence, the UFA departures last summer, injuries throughout the year, and then people who played through injuries and didn't always necessarily play very well. He had a tough job to do, and he kept Winnipeg in it to this point. And now all of a sudden, you add a balanced roster or something closer to it with the Dylan DeMello acquisition, and Connor Hellebuck having maybe something approaching an average workload instead of something ridiculous. Yeah, he has the ability to be a difference maker and win a series or steal one that Winnipeg shouldn't otherwise take.
All right. Well, there you go. Connor Hellebuck, the Strava Craft coffee game changer for the Winnipeg Jets. Strava Craft is the rich CBD-infused coffee that you can purchase in K-Cups for your Keurig, also whole bean or ground as well. And you can get 20% off when you use code DNVR20 at checkout. The CBD is not psychoactive and has been known to help many aches and pains, so give it a try today. And, of course, if you're pouring one out for Connor Hellebuck and the struggling goalies with no defense in front of them, go to Breckenridge Brewery to pick up your beer from the farmhouse down in Littleton. You can get $5 off there as well when you order for curbside pickup and use code DNVR. And of course, support them by getting the Avalanche Amber, the Mile High City, the Agave Wheat, you name it, any one of their amazing beers. Or you can always get it on tap down at the DNVR bar. Opening day today, we're already full for that. That has filled up entirely on RSVPs. So if you come down today, you might not be able to get in, but be sure to sign up for our next watch party, as they should be coming quick and often very soon.
We're a week away from the Avs.
Yeah, indeed. A week away from proper hockey games happening at the DNVR bar. So I cannot wait for that. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. There was a certain tweet that you made couple weeks ago now, but it has to do with the Calder Trophy and one Adam Fox. And I am curious what your argument is for having Adam Fox just as high as you do here. So let me hear it.
Well, Adam Fox did not have quite the offensive season as the two much more famous defensive prospects ahead of him. You may have heard of one of them, but the other one's Quinn Hughes. All hail Kale. I'm just reading this for the first time. I've just been reading All Hail for most of it.
Yeah, I had to get up into the shot a little
bit. For me, the reason, the case for Adam Fox is the fact that not only did he have most of a great offensive season, but he also had an impact on a very difficult and damaged New York Rangers defense core. He had a positive impact measurably on flow of play metrics. And not only was this young player able to generate a huge amount of offense, though not Cale Makar levels of offense. I need to offer that caveat so you guys have me back someday. But he was able to take a situation that a lot of defenders have struggled in over recent years. The New York Rangers defensive system, their poor transition defense. Jacob Trouba struggled in a big way this year. Neil Pianka last year struggled in a big way and was a top 4 defenseman with success in Winnipeg right now. I think that we underestimate collectively just how difficult the job of a defender in New York has been over the last couple of seasons. And with Fox, he's been able to take a little piece of that and make it better, which for a young player, though not as young as some of the guys he's up against, is a remarkable achievement. And I think that his impact on the game, point totals aside, may be at or even above the level of the higher, more highly touted defensive guys who are going to win the award.
So you're not worried about the sheltering?
I don't necessarily put too much weight in that. I mean, quality of teammates is more important than, in terms of an analytical impact, than quality of opposition or zone starts, for an example. You really have to get to the extremes of quality of competition and zone starts before they begin to have the same impact as quality of team. And I don't rate, minutes with Artemi Panarin are never a bad thing, but I don't really rate a lot of the Rangers in the same capacity that I do as the Avalanche, to be sure, but also the Canucks to a lesser degree. Okay.
It just seems where I struggled with Fox this year was that the underlyings are all great. If you look at basically anybody, any model or any of that stuff, Fox has been exceptional this season. The offense hasn't been quite at the same level. He just hasn't quite played as much as guys like Makar and Hughes, and that's fine. Like, that's not on him. That's coaching. But I struggled with the fact that he was clearly not a top pairing guy for them, and it just different opportunities, right? Like he's feasting on, he's excelling in just a different situation, whereas Fox is not. He's also not playing with all of the Rangers' top players. He's not playing against the top guys on the other team either. Not that Makar is getting hard matched against those dudes, because he wasn't, certainly. Zone starts I don't worry about, because that stuff, like most of the shifts started in the neutral zone anyway, on the fly. And it's like where a guy starts in a face-off, it's just not that big of a deal for me. But I did find that tweet interesting, and we wanted to make sure that we brought that up on the show today.
I mean, it seems like kind of two opposing arguments here, right? In the past, AJ, you've argued Cale Makar makes a very good team great. And the argument here for Fox seems to be he makes an okay team significantly better.
He's, to be honest, he was their best defenseman this year. And that's not saying a lot, because the Rangers defense also not great. But like when you're beating out like Ryan Lindgren to be the best defenseman, woo. But they brought in Jacob Trouba to be the man, and he really struggled this year. Adam Fox outplayed him quite a bit, but Trouba's like in Fox's way, like directly in his way to being the top guy, in the same way that Trouba got blocked in Winnipeg behind Bufflin. Sometimes you just have the big roadblock, right? Like, that's how it goes.
Is Winnipeg celebrating that trade? Big W all the way around with the way Pianka's played?
I think the fan base absolutely adores that trade at this stage. And I think the mess in New York has maybe undersold what Trouba actually is as a player at this stage. I think he'll rebound or at least be able to improve upon his first season there. But right now, you look at point totals, you look at the impact that each player had. I think it's easy. And then you add Ville Heinola, who's Winnipeg's top defensive prospect. He's got a bright future ahead of him. And I think that, all of that trepidation from about a year ago at this time is gone. Winnipeg's feeling awfully good about that for sure. Also,
you're buying Neil Pianka as real, huh?
I am buying him as a top four defenseman. He was essentially Winnipeg's number one defenseman this season in terms of his minutes, in terms of his power play production as well, and in terms of how much they leaned on him in a matchup capacity, because Josh Morrissey, who you would expect to play that role, played most of the season with Tucker Poolman, who played last season mostly in the AHL. It was a tough season for him. Morrissey struggled at times. Pianka became the guy, and all the things that we sort of were worried about. His ability to challenge at the blue line, his zone entry prevention numbers, his time in his own zone. Well, it turns out his lateral movement, his ability to track those plays for Winnipeg has been excellent, like absolutely excellent. And I wrote him off as a third pairing defenseman who might help on the power play, who probably would help on the power play, but a third pairing defenseman to be sure. He held his own in a top four capacity. And a lot of that was actually that supposed weakness turning out to be a big strength for him. Winnipeg challenged the blue line very well this season. It was probably the one defensive thing that they did very well this season. And Pianka was a surprisingly large component of that. I sort of had to write a mea culpa at one point during the season saying, hey guys, based on what I sold you as a writer and what this guy actually is, I'm willing to believe that he's a lot better. There's a big difference there.
Those are always weird articles to write. we had to do a lot of that with Val Nichushkin this year.
Yeah, there was no faith there.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's many different opinions on Val Nichushkin in the world, but I also saw a dog in the background. Is this terrible manners if I ask who that was? And I'll concede the Fox argument if get that dog some screen time.
Rex, come here. I don't have any food, and he's lying down. Let's see. We can do dog cam. That's my dog, Rexar.
Rexar.
He's a big fat lazy boy for the most part.
To the point where he doesn't even want to turn around.
Yeah, likes
doesn't
to
even
lie
want to
around.
acknowledge us. Huh?
Snooze all day. I don't have any food. He doesn't care about me. He'll only do stuff for food.
Thanks for accommodating. Anyway, I interrupted. I'm glad I did though.
No, dog cam is always worth it for sure.
We regularly interrupt the show because Rex makes appearances.
I love it.
So, I guess sticking with kind of the Winnipeg theme here, and this is just my own findings, but is there anything to the collection of Finns you guys are trying to get over the past couple of years?
I like the angle. I've had great experiences in Finland. I fell in love with that country during the Global Series 2 years ago. I was able to explore it a little bit. I feel like I know some of the Finnish guys on the Jets team a little bit extra well because I actually know a little bit about their hometowns now. It's a really great connection, and it goes as far back as Timo Solani in the 90s and even further back into the WHA days of the Winnipeg Jets as well. There's just this long-standing connection for whatever reason. And if you ask the scouts, they say no. I mean, obviously, we have a certain amount of players in a range, and if we get a player that we like, we take them. There's nothing, it doesn't matter what his passport says. I still like the trend. It's fun. Finns win. It is something to celebrate, and there's just so much in common between Winnipeg and your average Finnish city in my mind that it's great to have them here.
Cold, desolate, and nothing to do, or what?
Patrick Laine has basically said those words, so I'm not necessarily how am I going to argue, but I love this city, and I love that you can drive half an hour and be in the Canadian Shield or have a lake access or have prairie access. And there's cottage country not too far from Winnipeg that looks so much like Tampere or Tampere, where Patrick Laine and some others are from. That the visuals of the rock and the granite and the forests and all that sort of stuff is the same too. And yeah, it gets dark and cold in the winter. We don't have to tell everybody about that.
But those 3 months in the summer where it's nice are very nice.
It's gorgeous right now, let me tell you what.
Yeah, I greatly enjoyed my time there last year. I spent 10 days in August in Winnipeg last summer, and it was a wonderful time. Gold Eyes games, great time.
Great way to spend the afternoon. Absolutely. Well done.
That was awesome. It was
got the proper Winnipeg experience, apparently.
Yeah, we even got rained on at some festival thing that we were going to, where people were playing really, really large games. It was awesome.
Amazing. We have because we all hibernate during the winter. There's a weekend in June that is our jazz fest. Right through about September long, we have about 7 festivals a day every day during those warm temperate months. So I can't even begin to guess at the one that you were at just because there are too many. But I'm glad that you experienced it. That's the real way to have spent your Winnipeg time.
It was cool. And I was going to get my first winter experience because the Avs were headed to Winnipeg the week after the shutdown. And I was all set to go. I was going to spend another week and a half in Winnipeg, and not to be, I guess.
Well, in some future version of the world where these things exist again, you let me know and we'll make you an itinerary, sir.
It'll be awesome. It's definitely going to be happening. I know too many people in Winnipeg at this point to just be like, can't ever go there again.
Well, the question came from Luke, right? Luke the Winnipegger. Hi, so you have at least one dedicated person, and you say you have many more, which is awesome. We're good.
Yeah, I mean, well, the fiance lives there now, so got to, yeah, yeah. We're turning her into a Colorado transplant, though.
Oh, I see. The borders. But you'll take Winnipeggers, right? It just doesn't go the other way right now. We don't allow Americans in.
Correct.
I think that's the rule.
Trust me, I know all too well. I would have spent the shutdown in Winnipeg. Honestly, I would have been there, but can't cross the border.
Your poor heart. I'm sorry.
It's a mess. It's it blows my mind. I can't cross the border to see my future wife, and the Blue Jays can't play home games in Toronto, but American hockey writers can go to these cities to cover hockey.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen some photos of the 2-week quarantine that they're starting. That does not sound like the most luxurious coverage situation, to be sure.
So since we're sort of just accidentally falling into this, how do you feel about the blackout? No media allowed inside the NHL bubble at all?
Yeah, well, 3 members of the media will be allowed, and media in quotes because it will be they'll officially be termed NHL staff, right? And so there'll be 3 NHL.com writers, and I'm sure that they'll do great work, but they won't do impartial, independent work, and there going to be some guidelines for what they're able to do and things that they must follow. I read a great thread from Sean Shapiro, the athletic writer in Dallas, who outlined all the things you can and cannot say. You can't say concussion unless the team leads with it. You can't say fight. You can, all these sorts of things. So if you take that attitude and cover an interesting bubble situation with COVID-19, I mean, that certainly leads to some questions of impartiality and how it gets handled. So there's that. I mean, I don't think that you can argue that the bubble will be covered as well as it could have been. And then it'll just be up to those writers who are kept outside of it to do their best and use their sources and work their phones and do all the things that you can possibly do to offer the best coverage that you can, even though you're not necessarily going to be in the room or any of those things that those other staff have access to.
Are you worried about us getting future access to the locker room? How much of a concern is that for you, that those days are over forever?
I don't believe that they're over forever. No, I do think that the NHL, the sense that I've gotten, and I'm only a few years into this, and I don't have the context of decades or something like some of the say PWHA higher ups would have, but the sense that I get is that the NHL would like to kind of control and curate its message as well and thoroughly as it can, just to be sure of what it's presenting out there. And there may be other situations where, but I'm just speculating, and that's not even fair. But I feel like there might be situations where they continue to sort of like claw back or assert themselves or try to control the message. I don't think that that's good, and I think in the long run that does a disservice when you sort of cut out more diverse and more objective voices from that sort of coverage. Do I think that we won't be allowed in rooms? No, I do think that there is a normal world coming back to us, at least in that regard, at some point when things, ideally get better.
I can tell you how many stories would not have been possible that we've shared on the hundreds of episodes of this podcast over the years that wouldn't have existed if we wouldn't have been allowed into locker rooms. And to be honest, like even covering the scrimmages and the practices and all the stuff now from a distance where everybody has the same exact content, you're seeing what's happening is that all of the content is starting to look kind of similar. We're all writing because we all get the same guys on the same days with the same quotes. We all end up naturally kind of finding the same angles and saying, well, that's the story of the day. And all of the coverage just sort of blends into one big mishmash of one thing. And it's hard to stand out. It's hard to be different in a world where everybody has the same exact stuff all the time. So
yeah, it takes more work to lean into that thing, to your voice, to your analysis, to whatever it is that makes you distinct. Yeah, to be sure.
It's tougher.
When you're not working in quarantine, of course, you can always get on to the virtual golf links with WGT Golf, our new gaming sponsor. Perfect. It's just my standard perfect segue right there. Go to DNVRgolf.com to download, and once you do download the game, search for DNVR2 to join the DNVR Clubhouse and participate in our weekly tournaments where you can play courses like Bethpage Black, St. Andrews, Bandon Dunes, and many other true-to-life ones. There are tons of different game modes, closest to the hole, stroke play, match play. You can even play on the top golf closest to the pin game. That's not the correct name of it, but I can't remember the correct name of it.
Closest to the hole.
There you go.
That's this weekend's tournament, by the way.
There you go. Closest to the hole, the DNVR Golf Open, I believe, is this weekend's tournament. So should be going live later tonight. Jump on it. Yeah. Try and score better than I can, because if you're not outscoring me, you're not winning. That's just.
I'm going to smoke you this week, Rudo.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, my goal is.
I felt pretty close to a decent round last week, man. I felt pretty close.
I got did not finish because mine crashed and I forgot to restart it.
Okay, well,
this week I'm kicking your ass.
Man. That's one in the Rudo column for sure. That's all I hear is the W.
Yeah, fair enough.
Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast, Free Skate Friday. It is a Friday, so we like to end the show by playing a little bit of a game today. If y'all are game, we have a little quiz set up here called Avs or Jets. And I'm going to ask y'all a question about the franchise's history, more or less, and y'all have to tell me whether the Avs or the Jets is the correct answer here. If you guys are ready to play, the first question is, and all right, to be clear, let me set some ground rules first. For historical questions, this only includes the current team. So for the Avs, it does not include Quebec. For the Jets, it does not include Atlanta. It's just since they became who they are now.
And no Jets 1.0?
No Jets 1.0. Current team.
WHA Jets.
None of that. Unless I'm asking you a question about Arizona, then maybe. But
I just want to put this on record. I'm extremely nervous for this. I market myself as somebody with a heavy analysis, with some reasoning and all that sort of stuff. But trivia is one of my most decided. I am being vulnerable right now, and I just want the world to acknowledge that right now as we kick this off.
For the record, I was also not supposed to participate in this because our third member of Free Skate Fridays, Evan Rowell, called in sick today. So I'm having to take his spot in this.
And I've heard you're extremely good. This is terrifying.
He has some pulls. He has some pulls sometimes.
There are days when you get into the zone. You know how it is.
Okay, Avs or Jets? Which team has the higher goals for per game in their history? And if you can get an actual number, you'll get insane bonus points, but there's no way you will.
I'm going to say the Avalanche too.
Yeah, 16-17 wasn't enough on its own to drag that down. I'm also going to say the Avs.
The Avs do have more goals for per game with 2.91. The Jets are at 2.89. So very, very close.
That's close. 16-17 almost did it.
Yeah, nearly took them down, but not quite. Question number 2. Most power play goals in a season by a single player.
Jets.
Avalanche.
The correct answer is the Winnipeg Jets. Patrick Laine had 20. Joe Sakic had 19.
Of course,
back in the day. Yep. Just makes sense, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Next question. We'll go away from goals and we'll go to the highest save percentage in a season, minimum 20 games by a single goaltender.
And that Patrick Waugh fellow was a Colorado Avalanche for a reasonable amount of years. It was the 9th. You got to go with Colorado on that front. The era adjustment just has to favor Waugh on that.
Is this era adjusted?
This is not era
adjusted. Or is it just raw save?
This is raw. Minimum 20 games in a season.
Man, well, in 20 games, that leaves the door open for a backup to just come in and have an awesome year. For a guy like
Anderson put together some spectacular numbers at times.
Yeah, he had one good year and one mediocre year, and it won't be him.
Okay.
He was a Vezina finalist that first year, but that's because that team was terrible. I'm gonna go with Jets on this one, and I 20 games minimum makes me feel like it's a backup and not one of the starters. Like it's gonna be like a Brossois, isn't it?
Oh, it could be Brossois last season, but he faded second half. What did he finish with? No, I don't think it was him. What do you got?
The correct answer is the Colorado Avalanche. However, really? AJ did guess the correct goaltender for the Jets. Brossois had a 9.25 for the highest in Jets history, 20 games minimum.
He started like a house on fire last year. He was incredible.
Yeah. That I remember. It was like, okay, come on. Are they just going to continue to fall into goaltenders here? Like after the Pavlik thing, it was like the universe was hooking him up.
Yeah, I mean, he fell off towards the end, but I guess he was still the best all told by these criteria. Sorry, what's the truth?
The truth is David Abisher had a 9.31 in 21 games back in the day.
Glorious.
So, when you get to play behind one of the best defenses ever, maybe makes life a bit easier.
Was that in 01?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew it was bad. I knew that 20 games was the key there.
Yep. All right.
Damn
Question
you,
number
Rudo.
4. I believe it is tied up 2-2 right now. As you both got question 1 correct, and then you traded on power play and goalies.
Oh, yeah.
Question number 4. Which team has the better historical power play percentage across their existences?
I'm going to go with Winnipeg on that. Blinded by the last 3 years.
I think I'm going to go
sample size, because they've been around for so few years total. So that's what I'm betting on.
Yeah, I think I'm also going to go with Winnipeg.
The correct answer is the Colorado Avalanche.
Really?
I made them tough, though. The Avs, 18.8% historically. The Jets, 18.7% historically.
Wait, you couldn't perceive that? Like, come on. You call analysts.
Jeez.
I figured the line A recency bias might get you guys on that one.
Yeah, it was. Well, and knowing that the Avs the last couple of years have been just so meh.
All right.
For a long time, they've been meh on the power play.
Why? This is like the Edmonton Oilers before this season when they just became spectacular, and you're wondering how Connor McDavid doesn't lead the NHL's best power play. But so what happens in Colorado? Or do I get to hijack things? I don't know what you're like for time.
With under Bednar specifically, it's that their power plays have always played through the defenseman, and their goal is to shoot from far away with a lot of traffic in front. Now I'm not kidding you. All the analytics investments that they've made and all the everything that they've done into increasing their knowledge base, and that's what their power play plan has been, is to shoot from the point. And it's
sounds a little old-fashioned is my hot take. Sounds a little old-fashioned.
It's really, really frustrating when you have Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon on each side, who are each easy 30-goal guys, where you're just like...
It's maybe even more frustrating when you see McKinnon move further away before he decides to shoot, as he travels back to the blue line to throw a soft wrister on net.
Oh my God, that soft wrist! And so the soft wrist shot goes in 4 times this year, and that's like a third of his shots on goal. If you look at his heat maps, he's got one from the blue line. It's like this deep red circle from the blue line, because McKinnon just... He loves that little wrist shot where he's like, oh, I'll just place it and we'll take his eyes away and the goalie won't be able to see it. Sure, scored one of them against Winnipeg this year that was just like that. And it was cute, but this is reinforcing bad behavior.
It works just often enough for him that you begrudgingly accept that he keeps doing it.
Right. You start to see him do it and you're like, oh God. And then he scores and you're like, he's a superstar. He gets away with everything. And that's just how it goes. But anyway, that's why the power play, at least under Bednar, has been bad. Under Watt, it was actually pretty good.
Final question.
Jerome McKinley.
Well, that helps. For all the marbles here, which of these two teams this year has more Canadian players with a minimum of 15 games played?
I'm not running through both rosters, so I'm just going to say Colorado.
I feel like Colorado's a good bet. I was trying to. I didn't. The hamster in my brain didn't run his wheel fast enough to get through everybody there. But I feel like it's got to be Colorado too, just because I can't say I know the roster, but I don't feel like Winnipeg is Canada heavy as a general rule.
I really don't think Colorado is either. There are so many Europeans on both teams.
Yeah, some of Winnipeg's impact players are Americans. Yeah, I without going through and pulling up a tab secretly.
No cheating. Yeah.
Well, it's neither of Colorado's goaltenders almost none of their defense.
Oh, okay, now we're gonna just run through the whole roster.
Like, I mean, you can give me a time limit here. This isn't Jeopardy. I don't have the Sonic timer stressing me out.
It feels like both teams will be below average.
Yeah,
that's how
that I would agree with. I would say that's a fair assessment.
Yeah. I guess it would depend on rosters, like which configuration of the roster too, because if a bunch of these AHL guys get called up, that adds a bunch of Canadians for Colorado.
Like I said, minimum 15 games.
Yeah, no, I'm holding the Colorado. I can't find enough Canadian Winnipeg Jets to make me believe in Canada.
Yeah, there's just so many heroes. I'm gonna go Colorado too, but I don't think it's gonna be good.
Correct answer is Winnipeg. Winnipeg with 9 Canadians, Colorado with 8.
No.
That's 8.
For Colorado, that included Mark Barberio as well as the 7th defenseman, kind of. So Colorado was scraping by there. But yeah, some of those teams you'll see 12, 13, 14, 15 guys from Canada. And these two not particularly Canadian as far as their roster makeup.
Do you have it in front of you? I want to know who the least games played or the most obscure sounding to you Winnipeg Jet that qualified as Canadian.
I can pull it up. I knew Gabe Bork because he played in Colorado, so that one wasn't too bad. Eakin kind of knew.
Does Eakin count? Does Eakin's 8 games count for this though? He played more than 8 games total, but he played most of them outside of Winnipeg.
That's true. I didn't account for that.
Saying,
maybe that one. So maybe it's a tie. It was a trick question, and they both had 8.
Perfect.
I'm just fighting for whatever I can.
Nobody wins. Letestu didn't play enough games, but I did not know that he was Canadian. As I was looking through.
When in doubt, dude.
Same, I guess. So this is Winnipeg's problem. They have a bunch of dudes that almost played enough with Eakin, Letestu, and then Little as well because he was hurt all year. Doesn't really count. I don't know. Yeah, I think I recognize most of the Canadians. I guess Logan Shaw would be the one that I'm like, okay, that's a guy.
Yeah, that's definitely a mailman's name.
Yeah, I guess that pretty much is going to wrap up the show for us, though. So, Murat, I don't know.
You got to play with your A. It's a Murat.
Murat, the A. Okay, the emphasis is on the A. Got it. Anything you want to plug for whatever you're working on? Anything else? Go for it.
Well, I mean, I cover the Winnipeg Jets at The Athletic, so if you're an Athletic subscriber and you need to know about one of Colorado's possible future opponents, I mean, the Winnipeg Jets section of The Athletic would be the place to go for that. And other than that, you can follow me on Twitter at WPGMURAT. It's Winnipeg Murat. I claim to be the only Murat in this city, and no one has ever proved me wrong.
It's definitely the only Murat I know. Murat. I'll get it someday. I promise. I'm sorry. The only one I know anywhere. So, it's the way I just don't know very many.
Super meaningful sample size there.
Yeah. I'm going to expand though. I'm going to use what you just said. And like the next username is going to be like Canada Murat. Then it's going to be NHL Murat. Then
World
Murat.
Yeah.
There you go. You're on your way. Thank you again for coming on. Much appreciated. But that is it for us today. Hope y'all enjoyed the episode for Free Skate Friday. We, of course, will be back again on Monday. But until then, hopefully, hockey coming soon.